Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Kwami. It's been some time since we have spoken. We had a very nice meeting in Accra, I think in 2011, but here we are at the end of 2012. It's nice to speak with you again. We ought to introduce ourselves. My name is Dayo Olopade. I'm a journalist, currently writing for the New York Times opinion blog Latitude about issues relating to Africa, and I'm also at the Yale Law School. Kwami?
Hi, my name is Kwami Ahiabenu II. I run PenPlusBytes. We focus on building the capacity of the media in Africa to use new media. In 2008, we launched African Elections Project, and we covered so far 11 elections on the continent. And we are looking forward towards Ghana's elections this year.
Yeah, that is the hot topic. I have not been in Accra since I saw you, but tell me what the mood is like. For those who don't know, there's an election this December that should have a brand new president. The current sitting president, the one-time sitting president, John Mills, died in office this summer and was replaced by the vice president. But at the same time, Mills was set to contest an election. What's the mood on the ground in Accra?
A lot of people are recovering from the death of the president, Atta Mills has indicated, but all too soon, the political temperature is building up. We have the ruling government now represented by John Mahama contesting fiercely with Akufo-Addo of the NPP. So now it's full-time campaign.
Okay, so when is the actual day of the vote?
The vote is going to take place on the 7th of December 2012.
Okay, so just a month after the U.S. elections. This should be exciting. So I recently watched a film called An African Election by a filmmaker named Jareth Mertz that chronicles the 2008 election in Ghana, which was notable for being incredibly close. Ghana has been a sort of a leader in West Africa and in Africa generally, not just in terms of its early date of independence in 1957, but in its transition to representative democracy and free and fair elections. And so it was remarkable to me to see, I know you haven't seen the film, but it will be released in the U.S., I think October 1st, which is the day we're recording this, is that, Ghana, the election came down to, under a million votes. It was a really tight race, and yet, the election was able to proceed without violence, without, theft and fraud, the kind of things that you may be associated with African democracies. And so it was really encouraging to see Ghana, go from a really hotly contested race to a pretty peaceful transition, which I guess is also mirrored in this summer's transition from Mills to Mahama. But do you expect, are Ghanaians just even-keeled by nature? What's so special about your democracy?
Just before I go on, just to say the election is closer than that. It was decided on about 41,000 votes, not 1 million. So that's...
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say 500,000, and you're right. It's an order of 10 smaller, 50,000 votes. Fewer than that.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, that shows that the country has the capacity to make decisions using democratic processes. And I think Ghana has gone through a period of coup d'etat, a lot of instability and all that. But our current dispensation in terms of democracy, I think we are providing leadership because we are using the institutions. Maybe there are some imperfections here and there, but we put in place systems and processes that ensure that when people go out to vote, it actually counts and they decide who becomes the president of the country. And I believe that is a very good example on the continent.
Right. No, it's very impressive. It's part of why, when Barack Obama took his Africa trip, his first trip as president, his only trip so far, we hope there will be more, he went to Ghana and he commended the parliament and the people for their good work. Do you expect that this election will be similarly smooth?
Yeah, so far, everything is pointing to the fact that the election will be smooth. There are some outstanding issues. One of them is about creation of new constituencies. Now, Parliament is going through the process of creating those constituencies. And a lot of people believe that it does not give sufficient time for political parties to contest those seats effectively. So that's going to be one of the thorny issues that will come up during this election about how the various stakeholders will react to the creation of those constituencies, and vis-a-vis the fact that people believe that, look, you need to give them more time to prepare to effectively contest in those constituencies. So that's one of the thorny issues and maybe a talking point in Ghana today about the upcoming elections.
Yeah. Can I ask I've covered a few elections in the continent. My own country's, Nigeria's, elections in 2011, last fall's election in Liberia. And, the real thing that I noticed there was how much people participate. And I think we can probably have a long discussion about, how people feel about democracy in the U.S. versus in other parts of the world. But I'm saying turnout is like up in the, 80, 90%, which is something that, Americans, for example, strive, would be hard pressed to have that kind of turnout. What is it that you think makes people feel like they can participate in these elections, that they must vote? I mean, how is that citizenship treated in Ghana?
On one level, people will say that a lot of people have time on their hands so they can participate in the process. And by the other hand, I think it's about democracy, and the whole process of elections is new for a lot of people. So they consider something that they want to participate in, and they are ready to invest their time. We've done elections in 11 countries, and in most of the countries you go, you see people getting up at the crack of dawn to go and queue so that they can participate in the electoral process. And that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my impression is that people will vote, again, because there is this sort of idleness factor. I mean, what else is there to do on Election Day? Which is maybe an argument for having it be a holiday, which it is not in America. But even if someone goes to vote, and this was the case among voters I spoke with in Nigeria and Liberia as well, the expectation of change is sort of mediated. It's not that they think, I will vote, and then my life will get better. There's a tension there between sort of needing to feel like they've participated and the sort of basic understanding that, not everything is going to change overnight. And I guess that's the riddle of all democracies and all voting. And I think we talked about this when we were in Accra, that, the citizen-state relationship in Africa is so broken on some level because, a lot of the states haven't been able to provide the kind of protections and the kind of welfare as well as the kind of broad economic growth that people want. And, people want jobs, people want security, people want all sorts of different things, including education and health. But they don't expect the government to give it to them. And this is this weird riddle because people will vote, as I said, in huge numbers, but they're still kind of have diminished expectations. What do you think governments can do to fix that expectations gap, to actually have people have faith that change will come?
I believe the solution to that is that the government have to follow the rule of law. I believe we have a lot of institutions, a lot of ministries or government agencies and all that. And each of those institutions are given roles and particular functions to perform. And I think one of the challenges you see here is that a lot of, when the politicians take over the matter of governance, they don't tend to ensure that the institutions work well. Take, for example, simple things about refuse collection. People want to live in a clean city, but there are institutions, which is the city authority, responsible for making sure that the city is clean. And most of the time, these institutions don't perform. So I see it as a simple matter that for a lot of people, they want to ensure that there's food on the table, they have peace of mind, there's security, and they can go about their normal businesses or life. And for that to happen, the various institutions that we have put in place should work. When the police are supposed to ensure that there is peace, they have to make sure that that happens. And so for me, the majority of failure on the part of the politicians is just lack of ensuring that they follow through not even their campaign or manifesto promises, but basic things that is set up in the constitutions, is set up in the various institutions of states and the various arms of governments.
Yeah. No, I mean, what was interesting about Liberia was that, I was there, I was in the air when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was announced as the Nobel Prize winner. So I landed in Monrovia to the news that the world was celebrating Ellen Sirleaf. And that was the big disconnect between, people around the world, maybe haven't even been to Liberia, the Nobel Committee. I mean, who's to say? But that people were getting ahead of themselves on some level because she represented change just symbolically. And she had been, she's well known in the West. She spent a lot of time in D.C., shaking hands, she's been at Harvard. And so people on the ground were like, listen, what has she done? She's done peace, maybe, okay, but what else? Where's the meat? And so the follow through, and for Sirleaf, that was part of her argument. Her argument was, I need more time. Because she'd made this big promise that she was going to leave office after one term, and so she was elected. Because people were tired of these dictators who would stay forever and never leave, which is, a diminishing problem as people sort of pass away. But people, she asked for more time to do the work that she knew she could possibly provide. And I think people, those who didn't support her, would point to that as an example of a politician telling a lie. People who did support her understood that change takes a lot of time and that the follow-through, as it were, might take another 5-year term. And I think that balance between sort of earning the trust of people, which I think she was able to do, which is why she won, and making sure that you're not abusing the trust is like the critical thing for politicians in Africa. And I don't know that many of them are as credible or as focused. Certainly, I think governance is improving across the board. That's a story that isn't told often enough. I think we talked about this, there were going to be 30 elections in 2011. And since then, there have been very few that have gone off, with actual problems. But we still have some of the more difficult ones ahead. I'm thinking of Kenya, where I lived. I'm thinking of Zimbabwe, who's also set to vote. And I think Ghana probably will be a great, example, but there is sort of this coming question of whether there will continue to be forward progress or whether we'll start to see, at least in the case of Kenya, the kind of ethno-political conflict that really hurt the country from 2007 to 2008. Do you expect it to be smooth and seamless, or are we going to see some backsliding?
I think everything points to the fact that Ghana institutions and democracy is more advanced in comparison to a place like Liberia. We also covered Liberia elections, and as you indicated, for a lot of people, they saw that, look, it's about what you know versus unknown. And they knew that the current president has done some work. There's potential that she may perform. And for a lot of people, they just don't know what the opposition can bring onto the table. And that became one of the issues during that elections. Coming back to Ghana, I believe that a lot of Ghanaians have realized that for the country to be prosperous and for the country to ensure that everybody gets a share of our national cake, we need, which includes oil, which I was going to come to. Yeah. We need peace because one case in point is our neighbor, which is Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire elections took place and took forever. And as we speak now, the issues surrounding the elections have not been settled because the border between Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana was closed recently because the authorities in Côte d'Ivoire believe that there are some opposition forces coming out of Ghana who are attacking them in Côte d'Ivoire. So it tells you that Ghana, give and take, we've gone through those challenges and maybe we have settled some of those issues. And some of the countries are still grappling with some of those challenges that come with ensuring that institutions are put in place. People believe that there's a level playing field. People believe that when they actually go out to vote, their vote actually counts. Although things may not be very perfect. And I think that's
I mean, I want to push back on this for a minute. I mean, so I just finished writing a book. I spent, I guess, the time since I saw you until basically this Labor Day in the U.S. in September, writing about institutions that are not the state and how they work in Africa. That's a subject for another Blogging Heads, but it was based on this idea that the state itself isn't seen as the site of real progress, that the progress and the real action is happening off camera somewhere else. And I think what's frustrating, I guess, to someone who is interested and committed to African development is how much we focus on elections, how important it is to have a free and fair vote, right? And so Nigeria had a free and fair vote, Liberia had a free and fair vote, Ghana will have a free and fair vote, Kenya had a free and fair vote, Cameroon had a free and fair vote, Ivory Coast had a free and fair vote, but the outcomes, all vary. Just having an election, I'm going to argue, isn't democracy or progress, right? And if you look at, we'll take Ivory Coast, because we talked about that when we had first met. This guy lost, right? And everyone knew he lost. But he was still able to manipulate the situation in a way that was terrible for Ivory Coast citizens. So if I were Ivorian and I spent time queuing up to vote, and then it didn't matter because some guy just decided he deserved to win, I would be really frustrated. Likewise, in Cameroon, okay, Paul Biya has been there since 1982, okay? He is paranoid, autocratic. I feel no compunction about making these claims. If you're watching Paul Biya, sorry. But he's not a good leader. He's one of the sort of old school autocrats. He's the sort of the high court of longtime rulers in West Africa. And he got 77% of the vote in a free and fair vote. Now, that offers legitimacy that he doesn't deserve, in my opinion. So there's a real disconnect between like a good election and a bad outcome, and a bad election, where you could talk about even Zimbabwe's election was bad in the standards of the world in the case that there was violence, but it produced a coalition government that at least has been making some effort at improving the balance of power in that country. So I just feel like when you focus on having elections only, you miss the good and bad that comes with that and some of the stories that go on behind the scenes. What's your opinion on this? I think I know what it is. I think we talked about this, but why should we just have votes to have votes?
Elections are very expensive. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, and people even agree that why don't you put that into maybe agriculture so you have food and so on and so forth. But I think one of the key issues that come to play is that what is free and fair elections to start with? And even determining what constitutes free and fair election becomes a very big debate. I see that what you have is a better elections. And more importantly also, it goes down that what is the alternative? The alternative for us is that maybe soldiers will take a gun to change governance when they want to do that. Or we have the politicians, as you said, in Cameroon and all that, staying forever. So, yes, for me, I keep on repeating that, look, elections and democracy is not very perfect, but it's a better system we have now. And we have to ensure that we invest more into it. People talk about why don't we have maybe a benevolent dictator, an African leader who is good than anybody else, instead of going to their polls every time to vote. But I believe that, look, the system of elections is what we have now. It has some challenges, but a lot of good marks. So we have to ensure that we invest in ensuring that at the end of the day, elections should not be considered just a one-time event. It's a process. It starts when the elections is over, and not only maybe the year of the election people run. So we should ensure that it becomes the true election, which is a process. The process starts before, during, and after. And if we do that, invest more in the long-run process, then maybe the dividends may come out more visible to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things I would say, I kind of wanted to hold off on having this conversation, but okay, so there's an ongoing U.S. election, as you know, between Obama and Mitt Romney. And I've been sort of, as I prepared for this, thinking like, what's the same about African elections and American ones? What's really different? And I'd love to hear from you, like, what you think is being done differently in terms of actually having the vote and protecting and making sure the ballots aren't snatched and that people, are having secret ballots, et cetera, et cetera. But more generally, it just seems like, elections in the U.S. only have two parties, right? And one of the things that is actually positive, I would say, about the African example, just broadly construed, is that you have genuine multi-party democracy where you have multiple candidates. I know in Ghana there's two main parties, but even in the film, the African election film, there were voices of opposition that were getting fair time, on the radio waves and on TV and different campaign rallies. I saw that in Liberia as well. And in Nigeria, there are three big parties that divide up the parliamentary, the governorships, and the presidency. And I think that's actually a really positive feature of African democracy as compared to American democracy, where you have whoever the Democrat is and whoever the Republican is, and that's your choice and that's it. Can you tell me maybe in your experience, like what other features of the elections you've observed in Africa do you think are useful, that are good or innovative in any way, in terms of voter protection or in terms of just having more voices in the mix?
Yeah, I think comparing maybe elections in the US and Africa is comparing apples and oranges, but I think we can draw some key issues. One of them that big money plays role in US elections because you have to raise funds to finance the elections that takes place. And I think there's more visibility about who is contributing funds to those campaigns. But when it comes to the elections you see on the continent, sometimes very difficult to actually determine where those a lot of the political parties get their funding from. Are they funded by organizations or individuals in order? So the issue about campaign financing is one interesting area or an area to compare. The second issue is about, pardon?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I hadn't thought of that, but it's quite true.
That's one key issue. The second bit is that it's about cost of entry. Because a lot of people, as you mentioned, the two political parties in the US, the same is replicated in most of the places. That a lot of people want to form political parties, but also money become a stumbling block for them to attain that. And also, there's issue about ensuring that every vote counts. And when the big political parties have maybe they call it two elephants are fighting, for want of a better example, with the grasshoppers. So I see that comparing African elections to US elections, it's all order. But I see that there are some good things that can be borrowed from those two elections. The issue about the use of technology to ensure that people participate is becoming a big issue, so that you have a lot of political parties now launching their social media website. They're connecting with the voter using Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth. And that's quite interesting. And also the use of mobile phones and various applications linked to maybe SMS and all that. And for example, for Ghana's elections, we are now using biometric. Biometric means that we've gotten to maybe a better way of checking that the voter is the person who he or she claims he is. Because now you are going to check the biometric data of whoever walks to the polls. But at the same time, the technology need to run that is quite complex because you need battery to operate some of the systems because there are no electricity or any reliable source of power in some of the areas that voting is going to take place. And also, for again using a biometric example in Ghana, instead of prospective voters going to queue in long lines to check if their names and their records on the voter register is accurate, they can send a text message and the information come back and say, look, your data have been verified, all the information provided is okay. So I also see that the technology coming up and its usage is going to become an interesting factor. It may not be the determining factor for elections because a lot of our people still don't have access, and the cost of reasonable internet is quite expensive. And there are places in Ghana where you don't have a TV signal, nor internet or mobile phones coverage. So, but that is also something interesting which is happening.
Yeah, no, I think on the last point about technology, I mean, my time in Kenya was punctuated sort of between these two elections, which could be potentially quite violent, and the next election is in March, we'll see. But out of the 2007 post-election violence, as you would know, but I'll explain for those who are watching. Ushahidi, which means witness in Kiswahili, is a program that basically allows voters to report, the word that they used in the Nigerian context was mago mago and wuru wuru, which is to say, general mischief. If you see something, if you see a ballot box snatched, if you see someone from a party who's not supposed to be at the poll, or isn't a representative, or someone intimidating or harassing or anything like that, you can send an SMS to a centralized server that sort of puts that information on a map that individuals can use to distribute, any kind of organization that wants to maintain order. If there's actual violence, that can be dealt with and at least articulated. And it's all based on SMS, which is, again, a subject for another blogging head, this explosive reality across Africa. But I think what you're saying about biometrics is amazing. I was not aware that Ghana was doing this. I think the U.S., to go back to that comparison, has had all kinds of problems with voter fraud and allegations of voter fraud that don't exist. I wrote a piece, this would have been in 2008, for the New Republic about this issue, and it's resurfaced every 4 years. The Republicans, and I'll be partisan here for a second, feel advantaged the fewer people can vote. And so getting people off the rolls, getting those who are likely to vote Democratic, which is, say, the elderly and minorities, has been this constant flashpoint. And in Ohio and in Florida, these key battleground states, you're seeing, really damaging efforts to suppress the vote. And I think something like biometrics, where maybe you don't have a driver's license here in the U.S., but you could be identified in some way, would be really remarkable and would actually change and take that debate off the table. Leaving aside, of course, the privacy concerns and the data management concerns of that. I actually think that would be, across the board, no matter what country you're in, a really useful innovation. But let's talk about, I want to go back to this campaign finance thing, because that is the issue in America. Tell me how elections are financed in Ghana.
That's an interesting one. It's very difficult to tell. The political parties are supposed annually to file with the Electoral Commission their statements of accounts, but most of them don't do that. So what happens is that there are reported stories of our neighboring countries helping the political party fund the elections. There are individuals who are supposed to be contributing to the party. Some political parties are also telling you, the NPP, for example, have a system where individuals can send an SMS, and when they send an SMS, they contribute under $1 to the political party and all that. So there's a combination of...
More technology. This is amazing.
So there's a combination of various means and mechanisms where political parties get, but it's not quite visible, and that's the challenge. And the legal environment to bring them accountable is quite not there yet, and that's one of the issues that as a country we need to look at and say, look, there are some countries that the government to finance the political parties, do you want to consider that option? That have been debated in Ghana, but there's still no agreement about where to go with that. But the core issue is that a lot of people see that, look, when you have individuals or interests financing political parties, once they get into power, they have to repay, and it's going to be corruption, because the only way to repay back those contributions is to give government contracts which are inflated, or ensuring that they get access to government resources which are not accounted for. Then also for ruling governments, there is always accusation that they are using incumbency. That means they're using state resources to finance or to run their political campaign because they are in power. Right. So it's a very interesting debate going on for when each time we have elections, and I believe we have a long way to go to ensure that we can resolve issues surrounding campaign financing.
Yeah.
Because when we lost our president at Mills, one author in Nigeria claimed that he took the president to a Nigeria successful rich man, and the person financed the campaign, and in return, it was alleged that Atta Mills arranged for that businessman in question to have a banking license in Ghana as a payoff. So it raises interesting questions about how political parties are financed, and can we ensure that individuals, organizations, even countries don't put money into the political basket. That would mean that we have to pay one day through means that will be linked to corruptions.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big themes in my book is sort of, taking lessons from Africa and applying them to the West, as it were, which is unexpected because, there's been such a one-way transfer of information and money and military assistance, whatever you name it, from the West to Africa, the continent. But one thing that's interesting is that, again, to take the issue of cell phones, the lack of landlines meant that cell phones were, immediately the killer app in across Africa. Similarly, I think the fact that these sort of pay-to-play deals are so crude, is actually hopeful on some level for me. Like, if it really is just about some guy getting a banking contract 2 minutes after having a meeting with the president, we can deal with that, in the long term. If it really is just about parties going around with money, on the day of the election and giving it out to people from the party, that we can deal with that, right? It's not this legal regime. And you look at, Citizens United in the U.S. saying that, money is speech and that it's unlimited in some cases. That's been defended, and that is built into the architecture of the American political system now. So the problems are sort of more basic, I guess I would say, in Ghana, and it's certainly the case in Nigeria. It's certainly the case in Kenya. But that level of corruption is sort of so small ball compared to the entire system of the funding of congressional elections, the constant need to fundraise, the incessant emails from, the presidential campaigns, the expectation that these super PACs will sort of tip the race and that can spend literally millions of dollars. That is more difficult to stamp out and to reverse as a habit than this kind of lowball, pay-to-play, ultimately something that could be revealed, something that has more, I guess I'll say, transparency potential than the kind of backroom dealings and unnamed donors that we're seeing in the U.S. So if that's what we're dealing with, I feel almost hopeful on some way about corruption in politics. Because that, that can change, I think, as it becomes clear that that's unacceptable, or I don't know. But to that point, can I ask you, because I know you also work, with the media broadly, do you feel as though there's good information for voters from the news media in Ghana and elsewhere? Is it raising the level of sophistication of voters, the way that the races are covered, or is it not?
It's difficult to answer that question because the country is not one unit. You have the urban areas where there's maybe a lot of people having access to new media, television, radio, and all that. Then you go to some of the villages, even having radio coverage is an issue and all that. So yes, to a certain extent, information flow is coming and a lot of people are trying to make informed decisions. But majority of people is still a lot of the political party that moves noise, or the political party that goes around and give them castle access or bicycles or put money in their pockets.
Yeah.
That becomes more of a campaign issue rather than to put the issue on the table that how will I resolve the issue that the resources of the country is used for development. So it's not easy to say that it's one unit. It's a mixed bag of various geographical areas of the country or even income level that determine about how people perceive or look at some of the issues related to the elections.
Is there this sort of scandal gaffe culture in the media there? So much of the political journalism, and I will plead guilty, in my time in DC, to covering this kind of oh, he said something wrong and a big scandal. This sort of very micro, nitpicky, not substantive journalism, which is definitely how the U.S. covers its elections. Is that, to that extent, does that exist in Ghana? I mean, surely. Okay, so tell me more about that. Like, what are some of the big, has Muhammad said anything dumb recently?
Basically, it's about comments the president will make, and people say that, look, his words are a bit harsh and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And interesting things about the president's brother is called Ibrahim. He's a successful business person. A lot of people are linking him to the campaign in the sense that they believe that the brother is going to ensure that favors come his brother's way and so on and so forth. Then also, we have some media houses owned by political parties, either directly or indirectly. And that means that those stations are truly partisan. And their coverage is linked to whoever is their master. So you have one story, one party, one media house will have an angle to it, and the same story, another media house will have a totally different angle to it. So what we are, the lack of in-depth analysis bring the issue to the fore. We don't have that. It's just the shallow end of reporting on things because we can amplify the voice of your master becomes the norm rather than, look, can we investigate? Can we go in depth? Can we actually interrogate the issues beyond just what the politician has said or have not said?
Yeah, I mean, my hope for journalism in Africa is that that kind of combative, investigative, in-depth reporting becomes normalized. Certainly, I know that this is also the case in Kenya, that MPs will have interests in media companies, whether it's radio, which is another killer app in Africa, or in broadcast, or in newspapers. And that just, I mean, that I don't think that could happen in the U.S., but it certainly goes on in Kenya as well. But reporting alongside Kenyan reporters on politics, I was really struck by how deferential people would be. I mean, you know, having sort of got my training wheels in you know, the U.S. Capitol, you would run after a congressperson and demand an answer. And so it's sort of tough when there isn't that sort of, I don't know, killer instinct. Like, you would just have the prime minister say something, and then all the reporters would dutifully write it down, and then there was no clash. Not that it needs to be a shouting fest the way it can be, you know, on U.S. cable news, but my hope for African journalism is that there does become that holding accountable sort of mandate, I guess, becomes more present, because it's not there now. And I think that is one area where, you know, civil society and democracy would be much improved if the media environment were more sort of forward-thinking and less in bed with politicians. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Pardon me. I know you have to run soon, but I mean, what are your sort of key lessons about how to run an election in Africa or anywhere? Like, what do you think is absolutely essential, and what do you think you would change? Not that you can do this before December 7th, but you know, you were well positioned to sort of, you know, be influential in terms of how things are run.
The key is that we need to understand the fact that elections are a process. The challenge for a lot of even Ghana is that we just wait till the election year and we start to put a lot of things in place. My sense is that for this thing to work, we should make sure that it's an ongoing process. Yes, the election year or the election day is very important, but processes before and during and after are quite crucial. And more importantly also, we should ensure that each of the political parties are also held accountable. The political parties typically will go on the campaign platform and give a lot of promises. They want to put out roads, hospitals and all that. That's very good. Half of the time, you will not even bother to implement some of those promises. Also, their manifesto, they just don't work hard on it. I believe that each political parties, beyond the political noise and screaming and all that, they need to put on the table that, look, this is what we have to offer. And I believe that is a very crucial thing that political parties need to invest in. I see the relationship between the political parties and citizens a bit weak. It should be stronger. Citizens should play active parts in political parties itself because that's the bedrock of our democracy. Internal democracy, those parties need to be encouraged, need to be stimulated. So at the end of the day, things that are done in-house in the political parties can be translated on the national stage. So if in-house the political parties they lack democracy, there's no way when they come to the national stage they feel obligated to ensure that some of those things are put onto the table. So my thinking is that the political parties, beyond the rhetoric, they need to invest more in reaching out to their voters, in reaching out to various stakeholders, ensure that each of those stakeholders work in the space, work together to ensure that we have better elections. Because I believe that what we call free and fair elections is very problematic or even difficult to measure. So we need better elections.
Yeah.
And at this stage, for Ghana elections, we're covering elections under the African Elections Project. And I want to invite you to visit the site. It's africanelections.org/Ghana. You find us on Twitter, Facebook, and a host of other social media tools also.
Yeah. I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but I think you're right about constituencies being reached out to in a non sort of tribalist, for lack of a better word, way. I think that is a huge problem. One of the things that encouraged me about the Nigerian election in 2011, what I saw was people were splitting their ticket. They were voting ACN for governor, they were voting PDP for president, they were voting another party again for their local MP. And that showed a sophistication and understanding that this person has this platform and I support them, I think they're a good leader, whereas this person is different, as opposed to just, I'm a PDP man, or, you know, I'm an NPP person in Ghana. I think that change has to come from sort of below and above. The parties need to stop being, I think, so focused on what I'll call like sort of vague tribal or ethnic affiliations or habit, and really make an argument on the merits. I think that's what's missing. And I think, I think that would be, I would be overjoyed if that became the norm in African elections going forward. But I will let you go. I really appreciate catching up with you. It's been great. I know we have had some combative and interesting conversations about the role of elections in the past, and it's great to continue the conversation. I would encourage everyone, actually, to spend more time thinking about democracy abroad. AfricanElections.org is a great resource, and hopefully we'll have more of this in the future in Blogging Heads. But I wish you the best of luck in your election. I don't know what'll happen in ours here. But thank you again, Kwami.
Yeah, thanks also.
All right.
Let's talk.
Of course. Take care.